Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to come on this webinar and meet with us. We have been watching your emails and your questions and the comments you've been placing online. And we felt that it was really important to have at an additional webinar tonight, one focused on financial aid issues and housing issues, to be able to really address all the questions that have been posed by the students and the parents and our AU community overall. So my name is Wendy Bolin. I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies for American University, and I'm also the co-chair of the Fall Planning Task Force for American University. And so with me tonight, I have my colleagues from Housing and Campus Life and Financial Aid here. And what we're going to do is we're going to develop this webinar where we're going to try to answer your questions. We got a lot of pre-questions. As I mentioned, we've been watching your questions online. And so what we're trying to do today is to really answer the questions that have come up over and over and make sure that we can help to hopefully alleviate some of the worry and stress, as I know that the plan is new, it's changing, and we all have a lot that we need answers to. So that's really going to be the goal tonight. Before we do that, though, I did want to provide you with a little bit of background on the plan and our approach thus far. And that is that we have heard so much from our students about their variety of needs when it comes to coming back in the fall for their education. We know that there's groups of students who need to be online, that they cannot return to campus for a variety of reasons, whether it's international visa issues, whether it is family issues or medical issues. We understand that. We also know there's groups of students who would prefer to stay home this semester for a variety of other reasons. And then we know, and we heard loud and clear from so many of our students, that they just want to get back to campus, that they know it won't look exactly the same as it had in the past, but that the opportunity to be on campus with their friends safely, of course, is really something that they want. The ability to interact with their peers and their faculty. And so when we were developing a plan, we were really trying to take into account all of these factors. And we were trying to take into account these factors and all of these groups of students, with really focusing on health and safety as the main piece of our plan. And in looking at health and safety, there's a whole variety of mechanisms based on the current CDC guidelines and DC guidelines that we had to make sure were part of that plan. And so obviously that impacts housing and dining and all of the things that you have questions about. But in addition, part of that is making sure that our academic community is in a place to be really flexible and the ability to make adjustments quickly. You all saw in the spring, right? COVID-19 came upon us and we had to make some decisions really quickly. And this was hard for all of us. It was hard to make decisions to send students home off campus. It was hard to tell our faculty in the middle of spring break, quickly, you need to put your class online. But we knew we had to do that to keep everyone safe and to do the best we could for our community. And I want to be really, really honest and clear that that is absolutely at the center of all our decision making. It impacts all of it. And so with that in mind, we are planning our curriculum around the ability to be able to adjust and move and deliver our classes with the excellence that our faculty deliver their classes, no matter what happens. And what I mean by that is, if you're watching the news lately or you're listening to the news, you hear that different states are spiking again, that there's worry that this could come back or have another spike anyway, and we're seeing that in some of the states who have opened. And so as we approach this, and we're thrilled that DC is about to enter into phase 2 of opening, and our goals have been to continue to open campus more and more as we move forward, we also want to be really honest that it is changing every day. And the guidelines are changing every day. And there is no way that I could promise you or tell you this is exactly how it's going to be the first day you walk on campus. So what we're going to do is we want you to understand that. We want you to understand that we're trying to make the best decisions as quickly as possible and to respond to all of that change, and do that in a way that keeps everyone safe. Now, I'm going to start with one set of questions, and that is around fees. And we have heard you all. We understand that fees and the fees associated with your with coming to campus, with student health insurance, with the UPass, student activities, all of these fees are things that are questions for you and concerns, and we understand that. I don't have great answers on fees right now, but I want you to know that we hear you. We hear you loud and clear, and I promise you there is a group of people working on these fees right now, and more information will be forthcoming soon. I know that's not a great answer, but it has taken a while to work through some of these pieces, and so we will have an answer to you. We will have more information, and I want you to know that that's heard, but I don't have a better answer today on that. Now, before I turn it over to my colleagues on financial aid, I want to just tell you that this is being recorded, and it's being recorded for people who obviously weren't able to be a part of this so that they can watch it, but it will be available if you need it. So to start, there are a variety of general financial aid questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Brian Lee-Sang, who is responsible for the Office of Financial Aid. Brian unfortunately cannot be on camera due to some trouble with his internet right now on the webcam, but he is here, and he's going to talk through a lot of the questions that were submitted, especially around general financial aid questions. Does your aid change regardless of modality and what you select for your courses? And he's going to walk through some of those main questions we got, and then we'll move on to housing. So Brian,
hi,
thank you for joining us.
Hi, this is Brian Lee-Sang. I'm the Assistant Vice Provost in Financial Aid in the Office of Enrollment. As Wynda indicated, we got a lot of general questions from families regarding financial aid, and I've categorized them in two forms. There were general questions regardless of COVID, or regardless of the plan, and then there were questions more specific to how does financial aid how is financial aid impacted by the university's fall plan. And so what I'll do is I'll basically speak a small narrative so that and try to answer as many questions as possible, and hopefully I'll be available to answer additional questions if you guys have any at the end of this presentation. As far as financial aid is concerned, general questions, we began sending out financial aid letters about a week and a half ago. And so we're probably somewhere around 60% on the way through. And so many students should have received their award notices by now. They would have received an email directing them to the portal, and they should be able to see their upcoming 2021 financial aid award notice. We're continuing to mail out award notices, and we had sent out a notification to families notifying them that they would receive an award notice by July 1st of this year. And so if the students are completed in terms of that they filed the FAFSA form and they've completed all the documents, everyone should have received their award notice by July 1st. One thing I want to also acknowledge is that when completing the FAFSA form, many families completed this FAFSA form using the data that tax data that the federal government asked for, which is 2018 data. And we recognize that in light of COVID, that many families are financially impacted by this. And we certainly want to try to help and hear and meet the needs of the families that are impacted by COVID. And so if you are experiencing financial hardship, if there's a loss of jobs or a decrease in income, please feel free to reach out to your financial aid counselor, your student's financial aid counselor, and we'll be happy to try to address any appeals or concerns that families have. The second sort of questions that we got is really centered around how is aid impacted by university's fall plan. And what I want to make clear is that a student's financial aid is not impacted at all by the university's fall plan. The change in the delivery system in terms of the academics, the modality, whether or not a class is online or offline or hybrid, does not impact the student's financial aid at all. It does not impact their eligibility, nor does it impact the amount of aid that the student can receive. What I also want to make clear is whether or not a student is on campus or off campus does not impact their eligibility for aid or the amount of aid that the student receives. And the reason for this is that aid, when it's calculated to determine the amount that the student receives, really looks at two components. It's the cost of attendance and then the student's financial aid application. And the cost of attendance is tuition, it's housing, board charges, their fees and personal expenses, travel expenses, right? And so because housing is a factor of the cost of attendance, whether or not a student is on campus or off campus, we estimate a housing charge in the calculation for aid. And so if a student is on campus, typically we use a double rate room for students. And even if they're off campus, we use a double rate room. And it has been fine for most of our students. In fact, many of our upper class students will move off campus and may find housing that it's a little bit cheaper than the rate the double rate on campus. And we don't typically reduce their cost of attendance and reduce their aid, because we know that in many cases moving off campus and finding a housing charge that's a little bit less, there are other costs like electricity or cable bills and so on and so forth. So we typically leave the housing cost exactly the same. And so it will not, if a student is off campus now as opposed to on campus, it will not impact their aid at all. Now, in these times, we know that finding housing off campus may be different than in the past, where students are able to find cheaper housing. My daughter actually attended AU, and it was the last year she graduated. She was able to move off campus, and she found housing much cheaper. And certainly, I don't necessarily anticipate that that would be the case again this year with the demand that may be out there. Things could change. You may be lucky and find one that way, but if you do not, and there are and housing charges are higher than anticipated, feel free to reach out to the financial aid office, and we'll certainly evaluate that cost compared to what we're estimating as your housing charge and make adjustments where necessary. At that point, you should have a lease in hand or know what that cost is, and so that we could compare it to what we are estimating in the current standard cost of attendance budget. As far as families and how aid is dispersed. Now, if you're a student that received financial aid in excess of tuition, all right, so that when you get financial aid, the additional aid helps cover portions of your costs, your room and board charges. If you're off campus, you're still eligible to receive those same funds. Right, and so if you get aid that pays for tuition, because you're only going to be billed tuition, that aid will still be available to you. It will be dispersed to a student's account, and it will create a credit on the student's accounts and be refunded via ACH or via a check to the student's address on file. If you do not have ACH and you do anticipate getting a refund because you're only being charged housing and have aid in excess of tuition, please sign up for ACH. It's the fastest, best, and safest way to receive a refund. If you're a family that in the past got aid to help cover some tuition charges, but not all of it, or covered tuition but not the housing cost, then you generally would pay out of pocket. Obviously, because you're only going to be billed tuition, the payment will go directly to the student's rental landlord going forward. If you typically take out loans in order to meet the contribution number to pay for the housing on campus, you'll still be eligible for those loans up to the full cost of attendance. And so those funds will still be processed by the financial aid office like they have always have, and it will be dispersed on the student's account, and it will create that same credit that I mentioned before, and will be sent back to the student in the form of an ACH or refund. And the students could then take that funding and pay for their housing charges. Obviously, it will be because aid is dispersed in two payments, fall and then spring. The fall amount would be dispersed in its entirety in the form of a refund check, and the student will have to be able to manage that. And they could either pay the landlord for the whole semester if the amount covers that, or kind of manage it monthly and pay for both excess housing or for room and board. If you're unclear on how much to borrow, feel free to reach out to the financial aid office once you've kind of secured housing, and we'll help determine the amounts. So if you typically apply for a loan to cover housing, we'll work with you to kind of determine the amount. So that is more or less some of the questions that I had with regards to financial aid. And like I said, in general, financial aid is not impacted by both the modality, the type of classes that a student is taking, nor is it impacted by a student being on or off campus. And I'll be available later on to answer any more specific questions you guys have.
Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate that. Next, what I'm going to do is turn over to my colleague Chris Silva and my other colleagues in housing and also campus life. And Chris, if you could talk through where we are on housing. Specifically, I know we've had many questions from our upperclassmen about housing options and also housing both on campus and off campus.
Sure, thank you. And I'll start with just a brief overview, and then I'll pass it to my colleagues, Lisa Freeman and Joy Milford, to provide more details. The housing capacity for fall 2020, as you know, has been reduced to meet the different risk management, health and safety requirements due to COVID-19. And so all students that will be living on campus will be in single bedrooms. So if they are, for example, in Anderson Hall, where usually you would have 2 students per bedroom, now there's 1 student per bedroom. In the other buildings where we have apartment style, suite style, let's say, for example, like Cassell Hall or Nebraska Hall, where you have multiple rooms in a living room, you have still several students in an apartment, but you still have just 1 student per bedroom. So again, our capacity to house students on campus has been reduced because of that. And therefore, we have had to reorganize how our placement of students will be done. Our priority, as it has been in the past, has been for first-year students and second-year students. And so we have maintained that. And we understand that there were several juniors and seniors that had already reserved spaces and had expectations of going to certain places, certain rooms with friends, with roommates, and we're very sorry that we've had to undo that and cancel those reservations. So please know that to us that work in housing residence life and have worked with you for several years, that really really impacts us in not being able to provide that. And so we are trying to help all students in different ways based on their class standing in where they are. What has happened now since Tuesday when the announcement went out, the housing applications have been open for first-year students as well as returning sophomore students. And so students are able to go in and apply for housing from those 2 class standings. And there's a sequence of events similar to, for the returning students, similar to the room selection that they went through a few months ago. We are doing an expedited process as such. And so right now, as I said, the application is open for sophomore students, and it'll close on June 29th. Then we have a little bit of a time for administrative work from our office. And then on July 7th, students are going to go back into our housing portal and then pick their rooms. We know that due to this reduced capacity, we very likely will have more students that will apply than we have main campus spaces available. And so we have worked on a different measures to be able to augment this capacity. And I know my colleague Joy Milford will explain a little bit more about that. And so we have created some avenues to augment that and support sophomore students. We also have other practices that we're employing to support the juniors and seniors. We know that, as I said, you have an expectation. Now you have to work on finding off-campus housing, and we're trying to build and add more support than we've always had with our off-campus housing fairs and off-campus resources. And so we're continually adding that because we know it is going to be a logistical effort for you to sign a contract off campus, identify a location that's available to you that meets your needs. But please know that we're working very much to ensure that you have a good and safe fall experience, whether that is you're coming back to the main campus, to one of our new properties that we're expanding to, as well as providing resources for you to find your off-campus spaces. So I'll ask my colleague Joy to provide more information on our off-campus properties.
Thank you, Chris. And to everyone, I just want to echo Chris's sentiments that we truly are, heartfelt apologies for, not having what maybe you expected, but just know that we're doing absolutely everything we can to secure additional housing off campus. No stone is being left unturned. Anything from asking area apartments to hold spaces specifically for AU students, to blocking hotels and even master leasing hotels, we're doing that. I can't give information on the specifics of those contracts and agreements because, quite frankly, we're still in negotiation phases with a lot of them. And if any of you ever purchased anything that was contractual, you know that you can easily compromise your results if you publicize something too soon. So what I can give you, though, is these are our priorities for the off-campus housing. First, we're looking at places that are metro accessible. We're looking at places that have an abundance of retail availability, whether that's pharmacy, grocery stores. We're also making sure that these hotels or these properties can meet our health and safety requirements so that they mirror exactly what we're doing on campus, so that no one on the campus community is compromised. Certainly a priority for us, as I know it is for you, is affordability. So we're asking these hotels as much as possible to meet us where we are with AU housing rates. And lastly, but most certainly not least, we want to make sure that the neighborhoods are safe, and that the hotels or the apartments themselves can give us some assurance around security. And so that's what we're doing. That's what the negotiations are really built upon. And just as soon as we have cleared, executed contracts that we can publicize, we'll make these places available. We will be providing links on the housing website so that you will have access to go in and reserve, apply for these properties in the fastest time possible. But know that, you are our priority, and it's all about the student experience. So we don't want to rush this and enter into contracts that don't allow us to guarantee some level of the quality experience that we try to provide on campus. And I'm also at this point going to turn it over to Lisa, because I think there were a few more questions actually related more to the residents' life side of the house.
Thank you, Joy. Echoing the support that you need is here, to reach out, to let us know, you have unique individual circumstances that need some additional guidance and support. This is not a one-size-fits-all, and as Joy described, we want to make sure whatever spaces that we are able to offer provide you similar experiences as would be you being directly on campus. As it relates to the residence life experience, whether it's on campus or off campus, we're going to work to provide a seamless experience that includes having the staffing support that's able to assist students and respond to any residential needs that students might have. Our RAs, we are going to make sure that there's representation across all of the spaces that we have direct contact with, either whether it's on campus or through a master lease, as Joy described. I know that we're working closely with our learning communities to make sure that we're able to provide the level of support for students that want to be a part of the learning programs, including affinity housing. I know that has been a couple of questions have come up as to whether we will continue with affinity housing, and the answer is yes. This is too important of an initiative, critical to our campus, but more importantly to the students that make up our campus community. Because of the requirements of reducing density and capacity, we are going to have to relocate this community temporarily, but it will continue to be part of our prioritizing and providing students with that additional layer of support. My biggest goal as the Director of Residence Life is to make sure that we can create a seamless experience for students. And we are even more aware and sensitive to the fact that we have students now that are going to have to have a residential experience that is different than what they initially set out to do, which is why we encourage you to reach out to let us know how we can support you to make sure that you know that you have the care. We talk about being a community of care. We do care about you. We certainly want you to feel cared for, whether you're in your sophomore year or in your senior year. The same commitment that we made when you first arrived at AU is the same commitment that we hold true today. And I hope that you have that assurance. But reach out to us and let us know what are the needs that you have and how can we help to try to facilitate that and at least provide you with the resources that the housing team is diligently working to identify to support you in this next academic year.
Great, thanks, Lisa. I appreciate it. And for everyone else, Joy and Chris. Chris, would you be able to speak a little bit about some of the changes to the dining services? We have some questions around dining.
I'm not I would say the individual who runs dining, so I know that there's different practices also as they are related to the residence halls and to all of our campus operations that will utilize, the concept of reducing density to reduce the physical, improve physical distancing of individuals, using more technology to add pre-ordering so that it expedites ordering. But I know much of this information is going to be, if there's some of that already in an FAQ for dining, and there's also more information that will be coming in the dining website. I know there's tremendous care about this experience for students that are taking advantage of the dining program.
Great, thank you. And there are some questions for students who plan to be residence assistants, RAs on campus. And I'm not sure if Joy, you could speak to that at all, but I know we intend to have RAs still participate.
Yeah, I'll grab that one. Yes, I actually have a scheduled meeting with all RAs on Monday to talk about our staffing structure and how the fall plan is impacting them in their RA role. Currently, we anticipate having all RAs that were hired for the 2021 academic year. With the additions of some of the master lease properties, we're looking at potentially adding some additional staffing just to make sure, again, we're providing the same support and the same ability to provide support and resource for students that would have been living on campus.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I think we do have some time for some additional questions. And so I'll ask my colleagues. I know I have a few colleagues that are looking at the chat and going to provide us with some questions.
Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, I'm checking over these. I think there were some with questions about what happens with the apartment style units. Chris, are students going to be assigned one per bedroom, or how is that going to work?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you, Karen. The students in the apartment buildings will also be assigned one student per bedroom. There will still be multiple students in an apartment. So for example, if that is a 4-bedroom apartment, there would be 4 students in that apartment. Nebraska Hall, for example, is already like that. So the capacity in Nebraska is really not changing. But Cassell, for example, where you have apartments with 2 students per bedroom, that is going to be reduced for 1 student per bedroom. And that is the same with all of our buildings.
Maybe Joy can answer this one. There were questions about student employment on campus. So we've talked a little bit about the RAs, but what about other student options?
So similar to Chris, I am not an expert in student employment, but what I do know, because OCL, Office of Campus Life, where I'm an AVP, we do employ quite a bit of students on campus, is that number one, there are no plans right now to completely mitigate student employment. Obviously, student employment may look different in an environment where we still have some of our office on partial telework schedules. So there will be some changes, but absolutely no plans to eliminate student employment in the fall.
I'd like to jump in there also with regards to students that are on federal work study. We understand that students on federal work study and the availability of jobs may be reduced this year. And if students are having a hard time finding federal work study and they're awarded federal work study for the upcoming year, they should contact the financial aid office, and we will try to see what we can do to assist to ensure that students receive that funding in one format or another.
Thank you.
So I think we had some folks join us just a little bit late, and they're wondering if we can just kind of like briefly recap the extent to which or how they might be able to apply financial aid towards the off-campus housing costs.
And maybe I can jump in here too, Brian, wondering if you can talk a little bit about if students need a little bit more aid, if their housing costs go up, what they should do.
Well, to answer that question very specifically, it's really contacting the financial aid office. Like I said, that in aid, we're looking both at the cost of attendance and we're looking at the family's actual financial need, right? And so if the cost of attendance is obviously higher simply because a student is off campus and there is additional cost available, it may create eligibility that we may be able to try to address. Likewise, if a student is impacted because of COVID and their need level has changed, simply because something within the household has changed, it's also something that we can address. And so we would want families to reach out to their financial aid counselor. If you go online on our website, you can find the student's financial aid counselor. It's also on their hub. So if they go looking for their award notice, the financial aid counselor information is there along with their direct phone numbers so that you could reach out to them and they'll get back in contact with you or answer the phone and hopefully work it through for students.
Hey, I'm seeing. Oh, sorry,
I'm
go
so
ahead.
sorry. Hi, yes, my name is Charlene McDonald, and I'm also in the financial aid office. I just wanted to address the very first question as to general overview of how funds will be applied if you're on or off campus. As Brian addressed at the beginning of the webinar, whether a student is living on or off campus, we anticipate that that will be a cost that you'll incur during the academic year. And so it can be applied, our financial aid can be applied to both those who are living on campus and those who are living off campus. The way in which this would work is if you are in university-sponsored housing, you will be billed by the university, and that includes those who are underneath a master contract living in a AU-managed contract. Those bills will appear on, those charges will appear on your bill, and your financial aid will credit to your bill and pay those charges. If you're living off campus, not in an AU managed, facility, then if you receive aid in excess of your tuition and the fees that are assessed to your account, the excess amount will be given to you to help you cover the costs that you incur while you're living off campus. And so we encourage all of our students, if you do anticipate, if you do have aid in excess of tuition, and you do anticipate a refund, to please go ahead and provide your banking information so that we can directly deposit those funds via ACH to you, as that is the most efficient and fastest manner in which we can get those funds to you to help you cover those costs.
Thank you, Charlene. I think we have time for another one or two.
Sure. We have some specific questions around resources for veterans and military families. Where should they look for more information?
My colleagues in AU Central are the very first stop. We do have a Veteran Services office. That information can be found through the AU Central site. So it's american.edu/AU Central, and that will take you directly there.
So we're getting some questions around the refund process, when the checks will come and how to anticipate that. So Brian, wonder if you can talk just a little bit about that.
Yes, in general, with regards to refunds, the federal government has a rule that says that aid cannot be dispersed to federal aid cannot be dispersed to a student's accounts until 10 days prior to the start of classes. And so generally student accounts, once aid is paid, if the student has done everything they needed to in order for the aid to pay, for instance, if you have loans or promissory notes and things of that nature, if you completed all paperwork, aid typically 10 days prior to the start of classes, and student accounts begins generating refunds shortly. And so prior to start of classes, a student can receive a refund check with regards to their aid in excess of tuition. We are looking at, we recognize that there are some issues where families may need to make housing deposits if they're not in university sponsored housing. And we're looking at ways to try to find students who are extremely needy to be able to get funding to them to be able to pay deposits on housing. It's still a plan in works and something we'll need to kind of work through.
Other questions coming in?
We do have other questions that have come in. There's a few have come in about whether taking some time off might affect a merit award standing. That's one. And then for housing, similarly, if a student decides not to be on campus this fall, how might that affect their ability to apply for housing in the spring?
So let me turn the first question over to my colleague, Sharon Alston. Sharon, if you could talk about the potential of deferral. I think you might be muted.
Give me 1 second.
Now we hear you.
Oh. Okay, good. So for students who are continuing students, I would say that if you are thinking about taking any time off, any kind of a temporary leave, I think the first thing that I would encourage you to do is to please work with your academic advisor, because any decision that you make regarding interrupting your studies at AU could have long-term academic implications for you. At the students, at your unit's academic or at your unit's discretion, if it's desirable, they will guarantee you an automatic readmission, and the unit would then notify the university registrar to issue a temporary leave for you. The temporary leave that you get would specify the duration of the leave. It would either be for 1 or 2 semesters typically, as well as a limitation of a 1-year maximum automatic continuance in the same undergraduate program. You are required to request the leave no later than within the first 2 weeks in the term in which the leave would begin. And the unit can extend the leave only once, and they must notify the university registrar accordingly. Now, if you are receiving need-based financial assistance, and I will defer to my colleagues Brian and Charlene on this, but if you are receiving need-based financial assistance, be sure to contact your financial aid counselor. And Brian has already indicated exactly how you could find your financial aid counselor. You want to do that before you take any step to change your enrollment status. If you are taking a temporary leave, you would be able to maintain your eligibility for need-based financial assistance, providing that you return within the same academic year. As far as merit aid is concerned, and Brian, I would ask you to elaborate on this, but as long as you are in good academic standing at the point at which you are leaving the university and have met the merit award requirements, you should be able to retain your merit award. Brian?
Yes, just to follow up on the merit piece of it, if you withdrew prior to the start of classes and return either that academic year or subsequent academic year, you will be able to retain that merit award going forward. If you If you leave in the middle of the semester, there are other implications there with regards to your merit award. Satisfactory academic progress states that both you have to meet a quantitative and qualitative measure in order to keep your merit award, and so completion percentage is very important. And so, as Sharon indicated, if you are on merit scholarship and leaving at any point, please contact the financial aid office, and we'll let you know kind of exactly how it impacts your eligibility for aid.
Great, thank you. With our minute remaining, I wanted to, of course, thank you all for being here, but I wanted to really stress that we want to work with each and every one of you to help you to navigate this, as we are also navigating all that is going on right now and the changing landscape around COVID-19. We want you to know that, if you feel that taking courses online this fall is the best option for you and your family, given some of the challenges around housing and also some of the unknowns about the environment, the potential for a spike and things like that, we are absolutely making sure that our curriculum will be able to deliver for you, and so that you can complete your courses and move your degree forward in an online capacity. So we want you to know that while we are providing face-to-face opportunities for students who want those, we are also ensuring that our curriculum and our degrees can move forward from online, because we know that there are so many unknowns out there for all of us, and we really want to stress that. We would love to see you. There is nothing any of us want more than for all of us to be healthy and safe and back on campus normally, what we call normal. And this is different for all of us. And I know that we each have to make a decision that is that's best for us. And so please know that everyone at the university, while we don't have every answer right now, we're every day working to get you more and more information, and that we want to work with you and work through all of the challenges that you're facing. And so I appreciate your time. I appreciate your willingness to listen to us, to pose your questions, to ask the difficult questions. And as things come up, we're going to continue this conversation. We want to continue to be collaborative, continue to hold these webinars to provide you more information, especially information that impacts all of us. And so we will continue to reach out to us, but we hope that you continue to reach out. We will continue to reach out to you, but we hope that you also will continue to reach out to us. So thank you so much. I hope that you have a good Thursday evening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again soon. Thank you so much.